In the last section, we downloaded and installed Docker for Windows or Docker for Mac on your personal computer. You should now be able to run the command docker version at the command line and see a little bit of text like this appear. I now want to write out our very first kind of meaningful command with the Docker client or the Docker CLI. We're going to run a very quick command here, and then we're going to go through a very specific flow of actions that occurred when that command got executed. So here's the command. We're going to write docker run hello-world. Yes, it is kind of a hello world thing of sorts. Don't worry, it's going to be rather interesting. I'll then press enter, and we're going to very quickly see a lot of text start to scroll along the screen. Now I'm going to scroll up a little bit, and you'll see a little hello from Docker message right here. And then you'll notice underneath that, it lists out the series of steps that just occurred when you ran that command. Now we're going to go over this series of steps right here in great detail, so if you want to, you can kind of ignore that text for right now. I'm going to scroll up a little bit further, and I want you to see up here, it says unable to find image hello world locally. All right, so with that in mind, let's go take a look at a couple of diagrams that are going to help explain what just occurred when we ran that command. All right, here we go. So at the terminal, you and I executed the command docker run hello world. That starts up the Docker client or the Docker CLI. Again, the Docker CLI is in charge of taking commands from you, kind of doing a little bit of processing on them, and then communicating the commands over to something called the Docker server. And it's that Docker server that is really in charge of the heavy lifting. When we ran the command docker run hello world, that meant that we wanted to start up a new container using the image with the name of hello world. The hello world image has a tiny little program inside of it, whose sole purpose, sole job, is to print out the message that you see right here. That's the only purpose of that image. Now, when we ran that command and it was issued over to the Docker server, a series of actions very quickly occurred in the background. The Docker server saw that we were trying to start up a new container using an image called hello world. The first thing that the Docker server did was check to see if it already had a local copy, like a copy on your personal machine, of the hello world image or that hello world file. So the Docker server looked into something called the image cache. Now, because you and I just installed Docker on our personal computers, the image cache is currently empty. We have no images that have already been downloaded before. So because the image cache was empty, the Docker server decided to reach out to a free service called Docker Hub. The Docker Hub is a repository of free public images that you can freely download and run on your personal computer. So Docker server reached out to Docker Hub and said, hey, I'm looking for an image called hello world. Do you have one? Of course, the Docker Hub does. So Docker server downloaded this hello world file and stored it on your personal computer in this image cache, where it can now be reran at some point in the future very quickly without having to re-download it from the Docker Hub. So essentially, we downloaded it over here like so. After that, the Docker server then said, okay, great, I've got this image, and now it's time to use it to create an instance of a container. And remember what we just said about a container a moment ago. An container is an instance of an image. Its sole purpose is to run one very specific program. So the Docker server then essentially took that single file, loaded it up into memory, created a container out of it, and then ran a single program inside of it. And that single program's purpose was to print out the message that you see right here. So that's pretty much it. That's what happens when you run this docker run command. It reaches out to Docker Hub, it grabs the image, and then it creates a container out of that image. Now, one thing that you'll notice that's kind of interesting, if we run the docker run hello world command a second time, you'll notice that we are not going to see the message of downloading or container image not found locally that we saw the first time. So scroll back up to the very top. Here's the first time that we ran the command. You'll notice that up here it said unable to find image locally, but now the second time we did not see that message. And that is because we already downloaded it to our image cache on our personal computer. So the big lesson here is that the first time that you try to make use of any of these public images over here, you're going to have to do a little bit of a download, but then in the future after that, you can start up a container using that image much more quickly because the image has already been downloaded to your computer. All right. Now, in this entire flow, one thing that we've been kind of light on at this point is talking about exactly what a container is. So let's take a quick pause right here. We're going to come back in the next section and go into a little bit greater detail on exactly what a container is. So quick break, and I'll see you in just a minute.